So some other cool, really recent work, and I like to highlight this just because they did a really nice job of thinking about different morphologies. So your sort of sedimentological story of carbonates. You have carbonate fans plus micrite, so crystal fans in here, and predictions of how that forms in a lake. This is a playa lake. This is Walker Lake in Nevada. That was the last remnant of the big Lake Lahontan from the Pleistocene. And basically using this as a model to say, okay, based on where we think the crystal fans form versus the micrites and how they're forming and what setting they represent in the lake, you can kind of see that cartoonized here. We can actually predict lake level changes sort of between glacial and interglacial times and make predictions about how the O18 of water and temperature ought to change in those settings. So as you see the lake drying out, you're kind of increasing O18, you're evaporating, and you're increasing temperature. And then as the next glacial starts, you can kind of see that as well. So again, a really nice sort of model for pairing traditional carbonate sedimentology with really sophisticated stable isotope geochemistry. I'm going to skip a couple of these things and just do one other punchline for you geologists and say that some of the things that people have tried, because we have so much complexity in this possibility that we're getting carbonate formation that doesn't give us a simple climate parameter that we're used to, like mean annual temperature or warm month mean or even cold month mean, a lot of people have tried to make transfer functions to say, work yourself back to mean annual air temperature. And you want to use these with an extreme amount of caution. So this is an example of a global data set of lake water temperatures. And they made a bunch of transfer functions to say, okay, well, if you get a clumped isotope temperature and you're assuming that that's a summertime water temperature, we have this lovely equation that you can plug that into and get a mean annual air temperature from, right? Because they related it on this global basis. So the challenge with that, obviously, is when you start thinking about applying this in the geologic record, a really easy way to see how this is going to be a problem is if you look at mean annual air temperature in their data set versus the difference between your maximum temperature, so that might be your warm summertime temperature, and mean annual temperature. Not surprisingly, at places with really cold mean annual air temperatures, you have a really big difference between your mean annual temperature and your summertime temperature. Right? All that that's saying is what you already know, which is the cold places with the coldest mean annual temperatures also have the biggest range of temperatures, right? Set by latitude. You can see that here. Big mean annual range of temperature, really low mean annual temperature. This is basically a manifestation of that, your latitudinally driven seasonal range of temperature. So if you try and apply this, say, back in the early Eocene, when it was a phenomenally warmer world, and you say, oh, well, I have mean annual temperatures that were probably 10 degrees warmer than they are at present, but you're going backwards and saying, oh, I have summertime temperatures that are pretty high, you're going to end up sort of overestimating the mean annual temperature, because the only places in the modern environment where you have things that warm are in present day at much lower latitudes. So if you get some of those really warm season temperatures at mid-latitude, say in the Eocene where it's really warm, you're going to reconstruct a mean annual air temperature that's probably way too high for what it really was. So you really want to think about what you're doing before you apply some of these kinds of transfer functions. All right, I think I'm running out of time, so I'd be happy to talk. Most of these are systems that kind of went in order of what we know the most about. Speleothems are a system where they're a great example in the clumped isotope system of one where we know we can get some of these disequilibrium effects, just like we do end up with O18. And this is probably because the carbonate formation mechanism here is soil CO2 degassing. So if you think about your stalactite or your stalagmite, you're dripping water down this sort of conical feature, and you're creating this really thin film of water. So you have high surface area that can degas really fast. And so that's thought to be the mechanism for why you derive disequilibrium both in terms of the oxygen isotope system, that's been known for a while, but even in some clumped systems as well. What's cool about this particular example, and I will then end here, is the Devil's Hole calcite has long been known about because it's a really slow-growing calcite. The cave has a really consistent growth temperature, and so it ends up being an ideal place for assessing and establishing equilibrium. And the cool part about adding the temperature side to this story is they are actually able to assess and argue for what's been argued before just in the O18 system about whether or not the O18 thermometer calibration is correct or not, right? So I talked about our challenges of temperature calibration. Well, it turns out that that fractionation factor and that temperature-dependent O18 fractionation factor between water and calcite, if you go into the literature, you pick the one you want, right? But there's a lot of different calibrations, and they don't always match. So a cool thing about this is that they had really good match with sort of expected glacial temperatures, and could then back out the O18 of water and actually make some assessment about whether they thought the system, the actual temperature calibration system for O18 and carbonate was correct. So it just offers a bunch of really cool opportunities in thinking about settings like this. Okay, I will leave off on palestrin carbonates. They are transitional. They're going to be complicated, but I think they're going to be fun. And I think they are more common in the terrestrial rock record than we think. And I'll leave off here with my research, but if any of you are curious about how I've then applied this to my own geologic research, I'd be happy to tell you. There are slides on it if you get interested in some of that. Thanks.